Clothing as a sculptural theme, the second skin, the protective shell, the outline and also the filling out of a volume is of prime importance in Erwin Wurm's complex work, which includes performance, video, photography, drawing and sculpture, which are often combined as well as presented separately. Time is a further important factor which he explores in all kinds of different ways, from the shortest lived works, the dust sculptures, through large-scale installations in which fixed architectural components are dressed in knitted pullovers, to the performative one-minute sculptures. Wurm understands the concept of sculpture as the pre-modern premise that sculpture is concerned with the alteration of mass and volume. In this respect, he describes people gaining or losing weight as a sculptural act. This artistic expression, rather like the comic strip or science fiction images, is clear and simple, as well as readily accessible to a wide public. His work plays with the boundaries between form and formlessness, gravity and the absurd. To quote Erwin Wurm, "My work is about the drama of the pettiness of existence, whether one approaches it through philosophy or through a diet. In the end, we always draw the short straw." Now, it appears that I've drawn the short straw because Erwin is not on the screen. So this is the moment of these short discussions which I love the most, which is where I have to make up some text when I'm waiting for my visitor. I first got to know Erwin when we worked on a show at Gallery Today's Ropac in London. And it was the first exhibition he'd had in London, and solo exhibition, I should say. And I felt like Today's Ropac and the team that it was a moment where we could show some of the breadth of Erwin's oeuvre. So we filled the gallery with an amazing range of work: sculpture, drawings, installation, new work, a whole new body of work, which were the porcelain sculptures. Hooray!
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Very
I heard
nice
what you said.
Did you? Well, I was just getting going. I was about to describe the whole our working relationship on that wonderful show, which was such an enormous pleasure for me, because I got to know you and your family, and obviously, most importantly, your work. So it's a moment for me to say publicly thank you to you for making it such a pleasurable experience.
Thank you.
And I'm also thrilled that you're sitting in front of a piece that I absolutely love.
The wall piece here.
Yes. Will you, before we get into the questions, will you explain to everybody what it is that
Yeah, it's a wall piece. It's a knitted wall piece. I can move the camera a little bit, so it's, you see, it goes over an entire wall. And, you know, the interesting thing is when I made it and people come in and say, "Oh, wow, you are so lucky that it fitted with this door." So, yeah, that's a wall piece. And, you know, I do this quite often, a sweater, a pullover over a piece of architecture. And yeah.
It's spectacular. It's spectacular because for many, many reasons. One is the surprise element. It's the most beautiful pink, which this screen, you know, gives you an indication, but not really to the full extent. And then it has that marvelous, I'm going to put my hand up here, so it has a marvelous little strip of green, which runs up the top and the bottom, like a real jumper.
Like a proper jumper. Yes, every proper jumper has this, and it's necessary. It's a certain
very, very good. So, Erwin, your first solo exhibition was in 1981 at the Forum Stadtpark in Austria, when you were 27 years old. And your most recent opened last month at the Taipei Fine Arts Museum. A career of over 39 years, an extraordinary achievement. In that time, you've seen the art world change hugely. Can you tell us what these changes are from your perspective?
Oh, I mean, yes, this was really very interesting to watch because I have seen so many people coming up, quick up, high careers, going very up onto the top. And then all of a sudden, some years later, disappear. Some are constant. I've realized, and this I also try to relate to my work, one good idea is by far not enough to make a career for an entire artist's life. So it's necessary to go on and to develop and to increase the ideas but stay with and stick with the work. Yeah. And the most interesting thing for me was just recently I went through my bookshelves in my where all the books are, and I have collected many catalogs since the very beginning, and I took many catalogs in my hand, and I remembered, wow, yes, this artist, he was so important, and all of a sudden it doesn't even exist anymore. Maybe he exists, but the work is not here anymore. So this is something very impressive for me. So that makes everything relative. Means what is success? What does it mean to have success? How long does it last? How long does it hold? You never know, and one has to be grateful if it works kind of okay.
Well, Victor Willing, who is a wonderful artist, British artist, and sadly now dead, who's married to Paula Rego, said that, you know, if an artist is successful, that they should buy a laundrette. And this was many years ago, probably 30 years ago. But this idea that if you have that moment of success, that you don't assume it's going to last forever, and you use whatever income you get to do something useful with it, so that you can you have it.
And not only that, I think one should never become too sure about the work and about the success of the work. I think it's very important that you try on and fight every day. It's what I do. I try to look for new things, and I try to develop the work, and I'm never satisfied with something. I think that's a major thing for me.
Yeah. Do you always follow the same routine? For example, your working day.
Yeah,
I know that many years after having studio assistants, you recently decided to go back to working on your own. In the studio, the one in Limburg is 3 barn-like spaces. It's the most beautiful setting. However, now you're making sculpture called the European Philosophers series, one of which I think is going to be in marble. So how does this work with the different bodies of work? You're showing all over the world. You recently had your Taipei show. The works are coming in and going out, even now in the virus, I suppose, to some degree. How does it work?
But first, you mentioned the Taipei show. This was something totally new for me, because I was supposed to go there and shoot photos there, and then we would combine them with the older photos what I did in the year 2000 in Taipei, and we wanted to build up the show like this. Actually, my curator Jérôme Sans, we did this together, and then we were afraid that they would stop the show, as everybody did, and so many museums did. But they were keen enough to say, let's go on and let's still try it and do it. And we made, in a way, a long distance installation and tried to work it out in that way. And it was surprisingly going quite well. So they made real 3D sculptures after my instructions. This is one of the photographs I did there. It's a small table. And yes, this was exciting, because it showed that many of the traveling things like flights and so on are probably not necessary, and that we could do more from distance and more with instructions and so on. Well, on the other side, I miss, to be close to the work and to be there and to be a part of it. But answering your second part of the question, I realized on some point of my work that I lost track to my work, because I was working like, let's say, an architect or a designer, someone who plans things, and then others realize the pieces and do the pieces. And I stopped this because I had the feeling I lose a contact to the work. So I went back, and now I try to do as far as possible everything by myself, not in marble, because then this is a company realizing. But I make the maquette and I make the form, the basic form.
Well, I mean, of course, making exhibitions is something which is very, very, very personal, whether you're the curator or one of the team that puts them on, and of course, nothing more so than the artist. But it's incredible to think. I've only seen pictures, obviously, of the Taipei show, and it looks spectacular. It has all the elements of your work that I know and admire, and brilliant. And so, did you send them templates and ask them to conceive the sculpture, or were you on the Were you on a WhatsApp call saying, no, no, move it up a bit, down a bit, left a bit?
We did both. So we were there during the installation, and they really asked for centimeters by hanging the pieces. And then we made maquettes here. Then we pictured them and enlarged them, and they could really, and we measured them, and they were really precise, and they had to copy it basically. Yeah. And with the 1 minute sculptures, it was easy, but it was easy because that's a part of the system of the 1 minute sculptures. I make an instruction, send it somewhere, and the people follow the instructions and do it. And yeah. You know, you build a pedestal, and then I make a drawing, send the drawing to them, and they copy the drawing on the platform, and that's it. So that's quite easy. But with the other stuff, with the real sculptures, it was a challenge, and it was an experience. But it worked out quite well. We had some troubles, and it took a lot, and many calls and Instagram or whatever calls. Yeah.
No, I can imagine. It was very labor intensive. And this was one of the pieces here, one of the 1 minute sculptures that we had in your London show, which we borrowed from Tate. And it's a fantastic work. It's so, on the face of it, it's so simple. Anybody can do this. You know, you can buy 2 buckets from the local hardware store. You have you stand on a plinth, you put your feet into it, and you put the bucket over the head. So the principle is very simple. But the reality as a participant doing it is really very, very unnerving and discombobulating. But let's talk a little bit about your intention before I talk about the experience.
Yes, I mean, the intention was to change totally the perspective. So normally when we walk through an exhibition, we are subjects watching art pieces. And there, when you accept the invitation to realize the 1 minute sculpture, then you transfer into an object being watched by somebody else. And that's the main issue. And then, one thing is you can imagine this, but when you do it, it changes totally. Then all of a sudden, you are the spectators. How can I say it? My English is not so good. You're in the perspective, and everybody watches you, and everybody looks at you, and it's a very different experience. And all of a sudden, psychology knocks on its door and wants to be in, and many other things.
Yes, I mean, what I can say is your feet don't fit in the bucket. So the first thing is, you think,
well, it depends on the feet.
And you think, how can my feet be too big for this bucket? It's like, not possible, I haven't got big feet. But somehow the feet don't fit, so that's the first thing. So there's already a great degree of instability. And then when you put the bucket over the head, all your senses kind of go. I mean, it is an extraordinary phenomenon. And that's why you're such a brilliant artist, is because with 2 simple objects that anybody has access to, you can change the way we feel about ourselves, you can change the way we connect to the world, we can change our orientation, the way we are grounded in the earth, we can change our sensibility. And I became, to speak personally, you know, you feel slightly frightened, slightly panicky, completely out of control, which of course is a very important part of the human condition that we should all feel more often. Maybe we feel it now with the virus situation, but it's fascinating. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that I've also realized you get lost of your balance. Yeah. You're not able to balance anymore. So, well, but that's a side effect.
Yes.
That's not the most important thing.
Now we have also other images, I'm delighted to say, we'd love you to talk about. The Narrow House.
That's Narrow House.
So sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Narrow House. Yeah, it was my parents' house. I mean, the model was my parents' house, which was built in the 60s, and it was 10 meters wide and 20 meters long, and I don't know, 9 or something meters high, or 8 meters high. And then I wanted to squeeze it, so I squeezed it. I think it's 1 meter 10 or 1 meter 20. And from outside, it's strange already, but you're allowed to go in. The public can enter this over the terrace and go in, and there you see all the furnitures and all the rooms also squeezed. Amazing. And all the objects squeezed, and the pictures, photographs on the wall, on a certain wall squeezed, and the patterns of the bathroom squeezed. And then very easily, and because the house is just 1 meter 10, So the hallway or the rooms, they are 50 centimeters, kitchen is 40 centimeters wide, but in real length and the real height. Parents' bedroom is 35 centimeters wide, but 5 meters long and 3 meters high. And this is very much, all of a sudden, it produces claustrophobia. And immediately you get this sensation of locked in or claustrophobia or whatever, which relates to a certain society, to the society where I grew up. It was kind of a post-war society in Austria at that time, strict and yeah.
Yes. And also, interestingly, there are some of the elements that you feel when you do a 1 minute sculpture, at least the 1 minute sculpture I particularly experienced. I mean, a different kind of object, but nevertheless something comparable. But there are also a whole body. Sorry.
No, but what I see here still the garden around. I gave up the garden because it didn't work well. So then we started to make the house for the next shows just without this little garden in front. So then it's even more pure.
And so if we wanted to go and see this wonderful object, where could we see it?
One is in the collection in Philadelphia, and they're going to build a museum next year there. And the other part is still there are two houses. One was built here in Austria, in Vienna, and one was built in China for a big show I had in China many years ago. And this is traveling all the time. It was last year in several venues, and now it's here, waiting for the next. Actually, it goes in June to Ljubljana.
Fantastic! Yeah, great. And so, if we move on, this is an object that we showed in London inside the gallery, the Fat Mini. But it's symptomatic of a whole body of work, which seems to be so important in your the fat cars or the fat houses, which touch on your consideration and our collective obsession with weight, putting it on and losing it. There is this marvelous joke that always makes me smile about weight, which is I've tried to lose weight, but it always seems to find me. You know, and it's like, how true, where I feel very conscious of, and particularly at this point where, you know, we're confined to the home. It's difficult. But in your understanding of sculpture as the alternation of mass and volume, and losing weight as a sculptural process, which is an incredible concept, can you tell us more about this?
I mean, it's a synonym for the growth, becoming bigger and bigger. And I just made two objects that's the car and the house, because they symbolize first the house is the most necessary shelter. It's where we live in, and on the other side, it reflects also on a certain way ourselves. We can show off with a car or with a house, or it's whatever. There are very different levels. But especially in our society, in this very intense consumer society, and in the philosophy of our political system, the constant growth is a part of the system. And I have my doubts, and this is dealing directly with these issues. So it's not the fat itself, it's the growth, the constant growth. Everything has to be bigger and bigger and becoming more and more and more all the time. Yes, and that's what and this is what I'm dealing here with, these issues. And that's, by the way, Mini Austin, and it's from, I think it was 62, so it's an original Mini from an early original Mini, and yeah, we worked it over, and here it is.
And it's painted British racing green, which of course is a classic British colour for cars, particularly at the time.
Yeah, you know, when we make a car, we have to find the car. We have to find the real car first on the market, and we found this Mini, and we bought it, and then we transferred it. And this was actually the original color, the greenish.
Beautiful. It's fantastic. And one of the things that I was very surprised by is how small the original Mini is. It's tiny.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Compared to the Minis now, to my new.
Yeah. Compared to all the cars. Yeah, no, it's really, really, really tiny. It would fit. It fits in the living room.
Yes. Well, yes. It absolutely is spectacular. I mean, it fitted in the gallery perfectly, and in the living room, it would just be. It's fantastic. But your work encompasses many disciplines, including architecture, as we've seen, design, which is also another very really important strand of what you do, and fashion, as well as theatre design. This image here is a commission you had from US Vogue last year, where you dressed your two models in your work. I think you're the only artist to be commissioned by Vogue in their history, which is incredible. And you directed the shoot as well as oversaw the photographs. Can you tell us what that experience was like and why other disciplines are important to you?
Well, since I do the 1 minute sculpture since 22 years, or it's just 23 years now, 23 years, right? And very quick, I realized the idea was taken over by many, many other creative people like fashion photographers or designers and dancers and many other, from many other directions. And I saw, by the way, advertisements all of a sudden with my 1 minute sculptures not done by myself. So I thought, wow, it's interesting. I didn't even realize that I made an advertisement for this American brand. I don't know. I don't want to know the name now. And it wasn't me, it was somebody else. And they didn't ask, they just took the ideas over, which was very frightening. And then there was this French magazine, Self-Service. They invited a curator who took totally my idea over and made pieces with brands, clothes from brands and perfumes and so on. So this was very surprising. And I thought, now I have the chance. Either I look what others are doing, or I go and make a step myself. And also what I've realized, and what was most important for me, that the contemporary public space for art is not only the places, the galleries, the museums, and the places outside, but also the mass media. So I started to do this to make consciousness this step out to the public, to the mass medias and to the public medias. So I accepted many invitations to make these 1 minute sculptures for many, many, many magazines around the world. But then I was tired after some years and I got bored and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I stopped actually for 15 years. But then last year, 2 magazines came and I thought, why not? And Vogue was one, Anna Wintour, and yeah, I did it and it was fun. We went to Milano and had this fantastic model. She was really great, a former refugee. It's fantastic. Yeah, so I accepted it and did the work there.
No, but it's fantastic, but it's also such an interesting way to speak to a different audience, you know.
Very much.
And I mean, is it important for you, that public reception of your work? Is it important to you how many people follow you on Instagram, for example?
No, I don't care. I don't care about this. But what, you know, at the very beginning, I was Red Hot Chili Pepper made this video with the 1 minute sculptures Can't Stop, which was a big, huge surprise for me, and the most intense advertisement ever for my work. And I've realized this field is so interesting, and now many artists doing this. And what also was interesting for me at that time, MTV was big, and whenever I saw a video of a new music group or whatever, one could see the artists they stole the ideas from. So all these videos, the ideas were stolen from artists and they were not named. And for some reason, when the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it was actually Mark Romanek, the video director at that time, when he asked me, I was insisting that I wanted that they would credit me and put my name on it. And I think I was one of the first artists to be credited on TV. And this was so important for all the others also. And now it's different. Now it changed.
Yes.
Thanks God.
But I mean, thank God. But you're completely and utterly right. Now, do we have any more pictures to look at? So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is about how your work embraces both, it's unbelievably serious and profound, but also embraces the absurd. I mean, you have I think you have a very particular way of describing it. You're not so keen if it's described as humorous, but absurd is something different. So tell us, it's such a fine line to walk, and yet you walk it brilliantly.
It's a fine line, and it's a difficult line, because first I have to say I'm not a joke teller. I'm not telling jokes. So I would like to address certain issues and concerns. I would like to ask questions about ridiculousness, about embarrassment, and a big variety of social issues. And then I feel very connected to the absurd theater. I mean, I read these writers for many years, Genet and Beckett, and even the post generation like Thomas Bernhard and so on. I feel very close to them. And yeah, I realized for one day, when you look on our world from a certain perspective, from this perspective, from the absurd, or let's say from the paradox, you see more. And yes, humor is a part of it, but humor is not the main thing, and that's so important. So I prefer when people speak about this part of my work, the humor, when they say it's about the absurd, because, as I said, humor is just one part, and there are many other parts too.
But it's a wonderful entry point, because it's like going up in a lift. You know, you start at one level, and then gradually the other levels are revealed to you.
Yes, and it seduces people to come closer and to look at it, and then if they're willing, then they go deeper in, and if not, it's okay.
Yes, and that's extremely, I think, extremely important. Now you have this amazing setup in Limburg and indeed in Vienna, but particularly Limburg. And you work with your family. It's an incredible family unit. You're extraordinarily close. How does that literally work, insofar as you have your wife, who is, you know, a graphic designer, a professional graphic designer. Your son is your studio assistant, and even your 9-year-old daughter now is participating in photographs. And
well, this was an exception. This will not happen again.
She does it so well, my goodness.
Yeah. But it happened by coincidence. It was not a plan.
Oh, really?
The plan was first to go on the countryside, because I was fed up with Vienna, with the city, and with all the stress there, and all the problems with parking, and with work, and the neighbors, and the dirt, and the neighbors, and all this. This was a lot of exhaustment and a lot of struggle and fights. And then all of a sudden in the countryside, you have big space and you're free. Nobody watches you. Nobody's even talking to you. Nobody's interested in what you are doing, and even about artists. They just cannot care less if you're an artist or a farmer or whatever. And that's great. This I love. And then on the other side, we have place here. Trucks can come and pick things up, and there's no problem with honking cars behind them, and they have to stand on the second row. We have space and time, and that is relaxing. And I'll need a relaxing surrounding, because my work is in a way, I fight every day in my studio with myself and with the work, and then I have to travel a lot. So I need a space where I really have freedom and a relaxed time. And then, as you mentioned, my family. I mean, I'm an artist working as an artist since more or less 40 years. And when I met my wife, my second wife, and she was a graphic designer, after many years, she started to work slowly for me. So she, in a way, got pulled in. And also my son, and now he's 27, and he works now with me 3 years or 2.5 years. After his studies, he was working with banks and with other companies. And one day he said, well, I'm not satisfied. And I said, well, try it with us, and it worked. So, and I'm very grateful for that. And also my second son tried it. So, you know, it's something which was growing, which was not at the beginning an idea what I had. I was scared. I'm also scared about this situation, because you never know. Maybe a fight comes out, and then when you see each other every day, maybe, you know, difficult and struggling. But at the moment, it works quite well. Thanks God.
Well, that's very.
But I also have other people working with me, not only my family. Maybe that's important too.
Yes. And Erwin, like me, you're an older parent.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, she's such a beautiful girl. And what do you see as the advantages? People often ask me and say, what are the advantages and disadvantages of being an older parent? You know, Elise is very close to you. In the very brief conversation I just had, you know, she was talking about being an artist. You know, she's so, to be with her parents every day, you know, you're going out to work, but you're going out to work in the family orbit, if I can put it like that. I have one friend who's an artist, very, very well-known artist, who says, you know, artists should never have children, because the work is really like their children. And
Yeah, you know, there are different characters. I mean, for him, it's okay. For me, it would not be okay. I love children, and I love to be surrounded by family and by animals, and I'm just a different type. And yes, I know others say an artist should never teach at a university, should never, I don't know, should only drink and should not do this and not do that, or change women or whatever. I think it's, at the end, it's a character question, how one defines this. And for me, I need a stable situation, a peaceful situation. I remember times when I was alone. I was working during the day and hanging out at night to looking for someone to have sex or whatever, to have fun. And, you know, but when you do this every day, then you start to drink and to drugs and all this shit. I mean, many of my colleagues are departed already because of their lifestyle. And for me, it's just different. I was always too weak to drink too much, and to, you know, to be together with the others in the same way of drinking and taking drugs. I was physically too weak, but maybe that still kept me alive so far.
Yes.
Who knows?
I mean, it's so interesting how everybody finds their way, you know, and we hope that we all do, because then that's the secret of long life and happiness.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. You asked me how I'm doing with being an elder father. Yeah. I hate sometimes when I go with my daughter somewhere and people tell her, "Oh, is this your grandfather?" And she gets annoyed, and I get embarrassed. So it's not always nice and easy. It's always a struggle. Huh? But at the end, it's great. It's great.
Yes. Well, you can see that. And so, what plans now? You've had this extraordinarily.
What plans now?
Yes.
Going on
for exhibition.
Okay. Well, luckily enough, this year I had already several solo shows, and the pensum is done for this year. I have shows coming up with König, and I have a museum show in China and another one in Ljubljana. But and another one in Dornbirn, which came up to. But the year is okay. The year is good, so I'm fine with everything, and I'm working, and yeah.
And do you think you'll be doing more shows where you do it virtually, so by Skype or WhatsApp? Or is it too stressful?
It's too stressful. You know, it's stressful. When I talk like this, I mean, the whole morning is concentrated on this talk. And even yesterday, we were concentrating on the talk. And then yesterday, I had this whole Instagram day with Lehman Maupin Gallery. That's exhausting. I did nothing during these 2 days. I did nothing else than hanging around on my phone and tipping things in. So it's not really what I like. It's okay, but not really. It's not really big pleasure. Big pleasure for me is to be in the studio and to create new pieces, and eventually they come out well, or sometimes very often not. So, you know, and I think it's very important what we realize and what we see. To look at art on the Instagram or on the internet or whatever is great, but we need to see it for real. We need to stand in front of it and feel everything and see the size and smell it and whatever, and see the colors intensity and be able to walk a step back and look at it from distance or closer. That's necessary. I need this.
And what is in the studio at the moment? What are you working on?
A lot of different things. I work a lot.
Can you give us any indication of any new bodies of work?
Yeah, just now we made a house. It was the birth house of Sigmund Freud, and it's a house which is an L. It has an L form, and we tried to. Actually, we made a model and then we sat on it and squeezed it, and it looks like a sofa now, and we're doing it in big now. And then I make all these pieces with the fingers and the hands now, which are called 1 minute forever, because they relate to the 1 minute sculptures, but they last because they're made of concrete and so different things.
Very exciting, very exciting. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you
for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for spending the time to in the run up to this, and also to the.
Thank you very much.
I'm really grateful to you. And I hope the rest of the year goes really well, and I look forward to seeing your next exhibition in person.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Bye.
Julia, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh my God, I didn't do that. we're very, very grateful to Erwin for kindly doing that marvellous talk this morning. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen next week. Hannah Rothschild, who's the writer, the philanthropist, the former chair of the National Gallery, the first female chair of the National Gallery, will be my guest, and at 11 o'clock. And we're also delighted on the gallery front that our Paris gallery in the Marais has now reopened with Anthony Gormley and Sylvie Fleury exhibitions. And we look forward to the reopening of the Salzburg Gallery with Daniel Richter's show in June. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you next week at 11. Thank you again. Bye.